Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. We're going to talk about prayer tonight. You know, I have to say that if anyone had ever told me that I was going to go and teach about prayer, wait a minute. I would have said that that was never going to happen, but it's obvious that sometimes heaven has a mind of its own with you. So, you know, we only have a little bit of time this evening, and we're at one of those places in human evolution where I could keep talking till breakfast. But because there's so many extraordinary things that I would like to impart. And I've reached that stage in my life and that age where I no longer edit myself the way I used to. But, and you know what else? I no longer, how do I say this? Allows someone, the absence of faith in other people, prevent me from talking about what the abundance of faith has brought me. You know what I'm saying? Yes. So the doubts that other people have no longer determine what I share with you. So that's kind of nice. So with that, we don't have much time, so I'm going to cut to important things that I want to impart with you. And that's, first of all, I think it's really important for you to know that it's a very extraordinary time to be alive. This is not an ordinary time in human history, by any means. There are times in history when I think certain forces come together that cause a kind of alchemy that shifts evolution. For example, when Buddha came, when Jesus came, evolution changed. When they discovered fire, when they discovered the wheel, these types of discoveries or these types of births of people moved the human condition. It put it on fast forward in a way that ordinary evolution, like discovering a fishing pole, wouldn't do. In that same way, entering the nuclear age has happened at the same time that I don't think we get how many changes are happening in the world or what they are, and how this relates to God and how that relates to you. So in a magical weave, I'm going to try and do something and pull it together. Let me see here. Let's see if I can pull this off. I have no idea if I can do this. But one of the things you may have noticed is that people don't go to church very much anymore. They have a lot of anger with things like with the subject of God, or agreed? Yes. Where are you? Okay. But here's something that you probably don't think about. Do you know how rare, unusual, if ever before, there was ever a moment, a time on earth, where the majority of people had an issue with God? Never. Never. You're living at a time when the majority of human beings have an issue with God. Okay, now, just for the heck of it, I need you to just think about that. That until us, human beings just accepted that the divine was up there and we were down here. that somehow that was the nature of life and that was the order of the universe. It would never occur to people, it would never ever occur to people to question the celestial order of the universe like that. And now that's all you do. Now that's all anybody does. It would never, prior to these generations of us and maybe our parents, the people from the nuclear age on, roughly the 60s on, people would never have thought, I'm not going to go to church, I'm not going to go to synagogue, I'm just going to go my own way. Nobody would have thought of it. Now that's all we think of it. And so that's number one. I need you to just put that and think, how about that? Here's number two. Number two is that ever since forever, we human beings have two little wheels in us. Two little wheels. We have two little kinds of, two little wheels that run our engine. And that's the need to survive and the need to create. So that no matter what kind of obstacle humanity has ever been in, at all, from the Great Flood to any kind of wars, to plagues, to you name it, the nature of the human being is that we have always been able to create something, boats, planes, something, penicillin, for vaccines. We've been able to do anything to find a way to survive whatever obstacles have come our way until we entered the nuclear age. Once we entered the nuclear age and created weapons of mass destruction, we outdid ourselves. And we discovered that there's nothing we can create at all that can outrun what we've created to destroy ourselves. Absolutely nothing. Nothing. We have finally outdone ourselves. And what that has done is it's morphed something in us. It's morphed. For the first time in the history of our own evolution, the first time ever, our only way that we will ever survive what we have created in our darkness is to advance our light, is to become human beings incapable of using the destructive force we've created. And that has called us into this path of evolution, spiritual evolution, that all of you are a part of. And as part of that spiritual evolution, that has brought to order a need for us to understand God very differently. The God of our elders is not the God that works for us. And it is not the God that is somehow or other going to work for us as we move ahead in the years to come in the 21st and 22nd centuries as we move forward. So what is happening to you is a very profound evolution that is by design also a mystical revelation. One of the things that's very true about us is that we do not know ourselves very well at all. We don't know how we work. We don't know what makes us sick, and we don't understand how we heal. After all these centuries of studying ourselves, we still don't know those basics. We know that if we drink bad water, we're going to get sick, but essentially, understanding what the deeper part of ourselves is still a great mystery to us. I'm going to hold this. Is there any way to dim the lights in my eyes just a little bit? Is that possible? So I can see people a little better? Or is that not possible? Huh? Or can you turn up the house lights a little bit? Or is that at all possible? To balance the lights? May I ask that favor of you? Because I'm really going a little bit blind here with this light in my eye, and it's very unpleasant. So I'm just going to ask if you can do that. I wonder how entertainers do this. You know? I mean, it almost makes me want to break into a song, and you don't want that. You really don't want that. Okay. Can I move my chair? Forward? No, this thing is right there. Move it there in the corner? Okay, well, I'll just keep going. I'll hide back here. Okay. Now. House lights up. Can you put the house lights up? Can you put the house lights? He's probably thinking, will you please let me do my job? But the answer on that's no. We're your light committee. Okay, so let me get back to what's important with you. As you begin to appear in front of my eyes, I hope. You're not showing up. Anyway, enough. Let me just carry on because there's too much for me to tell you. So, how do I begin to tell you that you're turning into mystics out of monasteries? How do I begin to tell you that this is what I think is happening? I think we've come to the end, or we've come to the beginning of the end, I should put that way, of the Abrahamic religions. And the thing about that is, let me hit a pause button. If I had a drawing board behind me, I would draw a picture of a building with several floors on it, and I use this to illustrate. Some of you may have been in a workshop with me and you've seen me do this before, and so I'm going to give you this image, and I want you to hold this in your head and use it for the rest of your life. And I want us to work from this image. So picture a building with 12 floors, and you're that building. And once a building is built, you can't move that building anymore. Once you're born, you can't move anymore, except inside the building. Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Say hello, everybody. Oh, how nice is that? Okay, so once a building is built, you move inside the building. And that's really important, because once you can get this image in your head, once you get this visual in your head, you realize that, and this actually happened to me. I went to visit a friend of mine in New York, and it was a hot August day. And New York City on a hot August day is hot, and it's loud, and it's fragrant. And we were on the first, and I walked into the building on the first floor, and you could smell the city, and you could hear the city. And she lived on the top floor, and it was, I don't know, the 23rd or 24th, something like that. But when I got to her apartment, she had a tiny little balcony that was no bigger than this, but in New York City terms, this is big real estate. She had 2 little chairs and a table, and we sat out there and iced tea. From that floor, in the same building, in the same address, I could see the Hudson River. The air was cooler. It didn't have any of those taxis screaming. I couldn't smell the trash. I could see the Empire State Building, and as the sun began to drop, the lights of the city went on, and suddenly it was the most beautiful place in the world. Now, if I was on the first floor and I said to someone who had never seen this, same address, I'd say, do you know you live next to this, and you live next to that, and you live next to Rockefeller Center, and you live next to the Empire State Building, and you live right by the water? They could actually say, I do not, because they can't see it from there. Now, here's what's important. You have a first floor in you, and you have that penthouse. And that's what I realized, is that this is how consciousness works. That every time we move up a floor, just like in a building, we get a different view of our own life. And that's what consciousness is. It's moving up and getting a different view of exactly our own life. And that we don't change addresses, but we move up one more floor and we see the very same place we've always been, but it looks incredibly different. And every floor of our reality is more expensive because it costs more money to move up in our lives. It's more expensive. It's expensive to change inside. It costs you. And that's what you're so afraid of. It costs a lot to change. You know that when you see your world differently, there's a real good chance that your neighbors you're not going to be able to explain to your neighbors on the second floor what the view from the fifth floor looks like, because they haven't seen it. And especially if the people on the second floor are your family members and they say, what the heck are you talking about? There is no Hudson River. There is no Empire State Building. There is no Rockefellers. What if they said to you, there is no Mount Baker? I've never seen those mountains. What are you talking about? And someone who lives on the first floor could say to you, absolutely, there are no mountains, because they've never seen them, and they would be right. Do you get that? They would be right. Because from where they sit, they can't see any mountains. And this is really important to get, that is the way reality works for us. That we are all moving up our buildings one level at a time, and every time we move up, the view gets more extraordinary, but more risky, more expensive. And the people below, you can't verify, you can't validate, you can't prove what the view from your windows look like. And I have to emphasize that. You cannot take a window out, walk downstairs and say, look through this. Because they'll simply, once again, see what's on their floor. So you can take all the windows out of your 10th floor, bring them downstairs and say, look, and they will see only what's on the 6th floor. There's nothing in the window itself. It's you that's looking through that glass. You're the one that is able. So it isn't the glass. It isn't the window. It's you. And it is so important to understand this analogy that I'm giving you, this perspective, because you can use this for the rest of your life when you think, what floor am I on here? What floor? And I'm going to apply it to something here as I shift gears with the subject of prayer. And I shift gears with the subject of God. The most powerful floor in your building is your penthouse. And the reason it's so powerful is because in order for you to get to your penthouse, That journey requires that you strip yourself and that you get stripped of your own identity. That you can't get into your penthouse as who you are. You can only get into your penthouse as an impersonal soul. You can't be who you are. The journey to your penthouse is a journey into nothing. And I'm going to say this again. What makes this moment so extraordinary that we're living, and if I had you here all day, oh my God, even the events of the world can be explained through this prism. Every single religion is fighting for its life. Every single myth, every single everything is fighting for its life right now. Because the changes are so profound that we are going through. Our biology is changing. Our psychoecology is changing. We are morphing, going from one type of species to another. The Abrahamic religions are all based on the idea that there is a half God, half man image of God. The Messiah, the Son of God, and the Holy Prophet are all half God, half man figures. It may well be that we've come to the end of that model of God, and that what is happening in the Western world is that we are releasing that model in order that another experience of God, our capacity to recognize the next level of God can come through. I'm going to say this differently, and I'm going to say it through your health. Instead of speaking through theology, I'm now going to talk through your health. One of the laws, and it's going to be very simple, how many of you accept the idea of holistic health? Does that seem logical to you? So if I said to you, you know, you're very sick, and I have your heart's very sick, and I have some heart medicine, but it's going to blow your kidneys to hell. But how many of you would say, I'd prefer something that works for my whole body? All right? So what you're saying, in other words, is this. You are now living the truth, the mystical truth, that what is in one is in the whole. Is that not so? Would any of you argue and say, no, I don't accept that. I don't accept that at all, but I accept holistic health? Any of you? Okay, let's follow this. Now, I'm going to take you to the next level in your apartment building. Are you ready? All right, move up. You are now on the next floor. Now, on the next floor, you're on the third floor. So now you've accepted the idea of holistic health. You think it just applies to your health. But it doesn't. It is a mystical truth. And you've just applied that mystical truth to your health, but you've never applied it to your whole life. Holistic life. You've never applied it to the cosmos. What is in one is in the whole. Isn't that what Jesus taught? Isn't that what Buddha taught? Isn't that what every great teacher taught? What is in one is in the whole. Well, isn't that how your body works? Isn't that the law of nature? Isn't that how nature lives? What is in one is in the whole. So I want you to hit a pause button here. We are on your third floor. You're in your living room with me. And I'm going to introduce this truth to you. if this is a high mystical truth, what is in one is in the whole, what that means is anytime you believe something that causes you to separate from the whole, your body's going to be poisoned. Let me say that again. If you believe what is in one is in the whole, then any belief you have that separates you from other people will be poisonous to you. That includes religion. That includes a religion that says, our religion is superior to that one. That in order for you to believe in this God, that God's bad. Are you with me here? Okay, so follow me here on this floor. Because on the first floor of your building, this is where we cling to our religions and we cling to God, and God looks like us. God's a man, an off-planet God, who looks like us and thinks like us, and is a man. A white man. Okay. And I might add, and you have to remember, and this is what people they never really think about. They never really think about that for thousands of years, it's been the men who have, and by the way, this isn't like a sexist male thing. You need to hear it differently. But it has been the fact that it has been the men who have formed the way God thought and they told you. It has been men that have given the vocabulary to God. It has been men that have decided God has to be a logical, legalistic creature. Okay? It has been men who have formed the scriptures and wrote the scriptures and interpreted the scriptures and decided women were inadequate to do that. Now, this is really, really important to understand that from a different point of view, the whole cosmic power has been dominated by maleness. What this moment is about is that the balance is tipping, not in favor of the female. Be very clear here. This isn't a male versus female. It's about finally coming together in androgyny, in wholeness. In wholeness. It is a time when the force of life itself is coming into balance. And so how it's being manifested is that the way in which we have related to the stories of God through maleness, we have become disassociated with. We can't relate to those stories anymore. How many of you relate to those stories just the way you always did? Anybody? Okay, number two, how many of you still want to relate to something? Anybody? You have to. What are you doing in this audience? Okay, right. And yet, those stories don't seem to fit, but something has to fit. Something has to fit. What we are living in this time that we're living is we're between the stories of heaven. The stories that are no more, that the lights are going out, the old myths of Jesus, of Buddha, of the Messiah, of the half-God, half-man stories, and the story of how you will understand the nature of God that is emerging in us. What I believe is this. First, I think in my own life, I've had My background's in theology, my graduate work's in theology, and yet the way I've come to understand the nature of God is through working with you and doing medical intuitive readings of all things, and eventually getting into healing, and eventually wondering, why don't people heal? And are there miracles? And et cetera, et cetera. So of all that, here are my conclusions. You'll like this. I used to be able to teach logically, but then there was so much to say, and I had more than an hour. But here, first, God is law. If I get you in the apartment building and on the 10th floor in your penthouse, there is no off-planet God that looks like us. And I think for a lot of people, that's going to be a hard thing to let go of. But here's what's true. We are living in the beginning of us entering the galactic era, where we're going to be joining a galactic community of human beings, or a galactic community of living creatures. We are not the only planet with life. The idea of God's stories, where God is earth-centric and looks just like us, has to go. So one of the things that are happening in the unconscious of our soul is that these stories are getting demagnetized in the cosmos, and different stories are happening. One of the stages of evolution that's happening is that a thought form's been implanted in all of us, a holy thought form, a very mystical one. Every one of you has a thought form in you that your elders did not. And that thought form is that you somehow participate in the creation of your reality. Every one of you has that. You were not taught that by teachers. You were not taught that in any kind of official way at all. And yet, all of you have had that downloaded into you. And not just downloaded, but that one thought form is one of the core ingredients into who you are. That is a mystical truth. It's not an idea. It's not one of those things. It happens to be a high voltage core mystical truth. We do participate in the creation of our reality. But how were we to experience that truth? You don't learn a truth without a hands-on experience. We are experiencing it through our health, through creating and discovering we're responsible for our health or healing our own illness. So just as we discover that this truth is downloaded into us, we become obsessive about healing. Our body is our working laboratory to take this truth and stretch it out and see how it works. Do we create our reality? Well, how does it work within our attitudes? How does it work within how we feel? How does it work within our life? We are learning, in fact, that thought, in fact, does become form. We are learning that, in fact, we have an influence over, but not that much influence, but not that much. We do not choose everything about our life, but we co-participate. So we're learning something this way. Here is what is truth. The nature of God is law, because the nature of your body is law. The nature of you, Look around. What is happening is the nature of God is revealing itself within you and what you are learning about you. One is that your body is totally impersonal, though you are very personal in a personal relationship with it. So let me say this again so that you get what I just told you. Your body is very impersonal. There's nothing personal about your body. Its chemistry was created long before you. You couldn't stop your body from going into puberty if you tried, or menopause. It's got a cycle of its own. Do you understand me? Your body decides to go gray when it goes gray. You can't stop it. It's impersonal. You are dwelling in a very impersonal machine that is subject to the laws of aging, not to you. It is not subject to you. It is not subject to your temperament, to your likes or dislikes. You can abuse this body. You can do whatever you want to it. But you be mindful that you are dwelling in a very impersonal machine that you've named. And if you understand that, you understand a little bit more about the nature of God. God is completely impersonal, but you have a personal relationship. Now, if you understand your body a little bit more, you get that your body's totally impersonal. It has nothing to do with whether or not your body likes you, but if you overeat, it will get sick. And it has nothing to do with whether or not your body likes you, does it? You've broken the law. Now, the same goes with how you understand the nature of God. What is the nature of God like? God operates. Now, I want you to get to the 5th level of your building. Most people will say when they're in a crisis, how could this happen? There must be a reason for this. How many of you have ever said that? And what kind of reason were you expecting? Exactly. Just for fun.
Something for my benefit.
Something for your benefit, okay. Something logical, something to support you, something to your benefit. Am I agreed? And you think there's an off-planet God that's got that reason? You think there's like an off... All right, and how many of you think that... Here's another. How many of you believe that if you're a good person, something bad will never happen to you? Hands up. 2 people? All right. This is an example of superstition. You are not admitting it because you're afraid God's watching. That is the truth. That is the truth. Like, I'm not going to admit that. I'm not going to admit it. No, do you believe that? I'm not going to admit it. This is your fear of God. How many of you are afraid of God? Oh, wow. 2 people. You're the most amazing. Now stop it. All right, 3. How many of you are afraid that God's going to take your money? Come on, put your hands up. How many are afraid God will see you if you admit it? You got it bad. You've got it bad. Okay. So, all right, so maybe you'll find this good news. God could care less about your money. If he wants your money, if the divine wants your money, you're going bust. This comes from the Christian idea that you suffer in order to get close to God. Do any of you have that in your history? Right? Yeah. When I was a baby Catholic, I remember that we used to have like saints of the day, and I remember the nuns telling us these stories. And of course, I loved every minute of my Catholic childhood. I'm not someone who had a bad Catholic childhood. I adored it. And they would tell us these stories, but I remember some of them, where the saints were burned alive, and I was like, oy, and that's love? I mean, But we're going to get to that in a moment. This idea that has developed in us is that God behaves like us, but times 100. So that if we are loving, God is all loving. If we're fair, God's all fair. And if we play by logical, legal, democratic rules, so does God. So if something happens to us and we think we didn't deserve it, well, poof. And then if we suffer, we're owed something. How many of you think that if you suffer, you're owed something? Come on, you can tell me. It's just the two of us. Hands up, right? Yeah, you think it. You really believe that. As if somehow or other, there's the comeuppance. I'm owed this, right? And that is all that Christian God's Judeo-Christian thread that says somehow God is, or I've had people say to me who've been saved, they've had car accidents, they've come out of this, God must have saved me for something special. It's not enough that you lived. You now need to get something special. Living wasn't good enough? What? All right. No, people, no. Here's what this moment's about. We are learning that we create our own reality. That somehow or other, we are participants in what's happening within us and around us. At the same time, this idea that there's this off-planet God that behaves like a parent is kind of evaporating in the distance. But what's emerging is this picture of this idea that you are responsible, that I don't like that every choice you make has a powerful consequence. And that power is the nature of God in you. That is the divine. That somehow or other, and that sounds like it's not very holy or sacred, but this is what's true. God is very impersonal. God is law. The law of gravity, the law of sensation, the law of cause and effect, the law of magnetic attraction. God is law. There is nothing, absolutely nothing personal about the nature of God. One of the things that's changing are these religions that cause us to separate from each other are evaporating. None of us in this room will live to see the end of that, but we are living to see the beginning of the end. Eventually, I believe what is going to happen is a bio-spiritual theological ecology, where we get that we are micro-earths, and that our micro-earth is a duplicate of the macro. What is in one is in the whole. And what makes this world intimate with God is prayer. That somehow, in some way that I cannot explain, and it's not my role to explain, that every single thought you say, every prayer you say is immediately heard. That you matter more than you will ever know. You don't matter because you suffer and all this kind of nonsense and nothing's owed you. You matter because we are interconnected and woven to each other. You matter because you are. I think I oftentimes hear people will say to me, well, they think God is love. And I've never heard a more inadequate answer in my life. Because if God is, how many of you would say, yeah, that's something you believe? You believe God is love. How many of you? Well, see, I'll tell you why I have a problem with that. And that's because the thing that most people go to therapy for is love. They haven't got a clue how to love. They haven't got a clue what love is. They're afraid to love. They're afraid of being hurt, and yet they think God is love. So how does that work how does that work? Not very well at all. Not well, it doesn't transfer well. It doesn't do well. Most people haven't had a very successful experience with love, so how can they then possibly think that God is love when they can't even relate to it at a human level? I don't even go there. I wouldn't even begin to say that. The way to understand the nature of God is to begin with faith and to do it this way. It's been my experience that most people can tell me with greater conviction what they do not have faith in than what they do have faith in. That they can tell me, I'll tell you what I don't believe, and they can go on and on about, I don't believe this, and I don't believe that, and that church, and this, and those priests, and blah, 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 blah. And they can tell me what they do not believe in, but they cannot tell me what they have faith in. But they actually really do have faith in. And I'm going to jump here. And when you don't have, much less do people, and when you don't have faith in, and you could point to the church, but what I know they're really saying is the inability to have faith, period, transfers to, and I don't have faith in you, and I don't have faith in me. And I know when someone tells me that they don't know what they believe about God, they're also saying to me, and I don't have faith in myself. Because it inevitably follows that if you have not established a sense of having faith in something greater than yourself, I promise you, you don't have faith in yourself. You will break your word to yourself. Oh, yes, you will, and you will break your word to everybody else. It will be impossible for you to keep your word. Impossible. Because you don't have any faith in yourself. You'll say to yourself, well, I'll start my diet in the morning, but you won't. How can you possibly have faith in anything that you cannot see when you can't have faith in something you can see? It's not possible. It is not possible. I'm sorry, but it's not. It is not. You're imagining things. You're just totally imagining things. Faith is everything. Never mind love. Put that in the end of the tunnel. You have to start with faith. You have to. And you have to begin, never mind faith in God, you're just making it up. You have to start with faith in yourself. You want to find God? Start with faith in yourself. Start right there. And I am not kidding you. You start with having faith in yourself by saying, you know what, I'm going to keep my word to myself. Because with that, you will feel the beginning of grace come in. You'll feel it. If you make yourself a promise that says, I have to have faith in myself, that if someone says, will you keep your word? Can I borrow some space in your heart because I'm carrying something and it's so dense and so heavy that may I confide this in your heart? You finally have enough faith in yourself where you say, I will keep my word. I will. And in order for you to keep your word, that you will not tell somebody. You won't use it as a piece of gossip for attention. You absolutely trust and have enough faith and trust in yourself that you can give someone your word and for 24 hours keep it. You say to God, all right, it's you and me. I have to do this. Give me some grace. And little by little, you start scaffolding faith in yourself by keeping your own word. And once you start scaffolding that grace in yourself, You start scaffolding your self-esteem. And then when you say, you know, God help me, God help me. Then when you hear guidance, you have enough respect and faith and trust in yourself that you realize that I did get a message. I'm not imagining. I trust myself. You have to earn it. And that's how you find God. It's not given to you. It's not given to you. And it's certainly not given to you when, in fact, you spew it all over the place. You start with earning faith in yourself, and that's how you find God. That's where it begins. Never mind love, you'll get to love. That's nonsense. Finding God is hardcore. It's underneath your fingernails. It's the dirt and grime in your life. It's help me get through this. I need to keep my word. I need to not lie today. I need to not tell somebody something that's not true. Hold me accountable. You need to pray as though the grit depended on you. The first time a healing took place in one of my workshops, I'm talking the real thing. A woman with arthritis, and her hands opened up, and they'd been just awful, but they opened up. And I was so, you know, it's a funny thing. When I was a youngster, I never not had a very close rapport with the non-physical world. Ever, always, I always did. And you know, when I was older then and got into this field, and I would hear people say, and I heard this voice, and I thought I was crazy. You know what? I thought you were crazy. I never thought I was crazy. I always knew I wasn't. I always knew I wasn't. And I always thought everybody else was. And if not crazy, I always thought everybody else, I would wonder, how in the world do they leave the house so frightened? How do they survive in their world? They're so scared. How could anybody survive so afraid, or still wondering if there's a God, or still wondering if they have purpose or meaning in life? What do they think? Do they think God's just ignoring them? What's the matter? Don't they understand how life is set up? What's the matter with those people? And you know, I always kind of came from this, like, how is it that you think life should be set up, that there shouldn't be pain? I grew up in a house where every one of my elders lost one of their children, including my mother. I didn't grow up in one of those households where everything was easy and fair or anything like that. It was just, it was the way it was. It was the way it was. I didn't grow up with a God where everything was easy. It was like, this is the way it is. Heaven has reasons and you don't ask. And you don't treat it like you should be an exception to anything. Nobody's an exception to anything. What a great lesson. Nobody's an exception to anything. So get it out of your head. Never tell yourself you're somebody special, because you're not. Get it out of your head. Get it out of your head. One of the worst things you could tell yourself is that you are special. And I'm not kidding yourself. Never tell your children that. They're special to you, but there's no cosmic structure around which specialness is guiding their life. Do you understand that? Someone would say, I don't get it. Trust me, they're going to be better off when you say, here's what's true. There's nothing special and every prayer is answered. That's what they need to know. how are prayers answered? They go like this. Every one of you has angels. Not these non-physical angels where these people can conjure them up on stage and do readings. Stop it. What garbage. Okay. Ugh. Okay, now, angels are holy messengers, ladies and gentlemen. They are holy, holy messengers. And put the word holy back in your vocabulary. They are holy messengers. You have an angel near you. And the way angels work are this. You're never, ever eclipsed. You're never told what to do. Heaven will never, this is how it works. Have you ever had this experience where you are about to say something that's really not nice? Maybe once or twice, right? But, in saying something that's really not nice, you're really going to hurt somebody. And then you hear a voice and it says, are you sure you want to do that? Did you ever have that experience? Where that voice comes out of nowhere and it says, are you sure you want to do that? That's how your angel works. Your angel won't say, don't say that. What a bad thing to do. Because it's not apparent. One of the things heaven will not do is eclipse your will, but it will do what it can to direct you to not make a stupid choice, to not make a harmful choice, to not make a hurt. So it will say to you, are you sure you want to do that? The nature of heaven is that it works within your bio-spiritual ecology. When you're shopping, no matter where you are, you'll feel it moving in you when you say, should I eat this? And your body says, no. That is also your guidance system. That's divine organics. Divine organics. One of the things I learned when I was in medical intuition and healing is one of the greatest things about, one of the most essential challenges we all go through, all of us, is that we all have to develop self-esteem. All of us. Self-esteem is our great, holy, spiritual turning point. That's it. Self-esteem is our great, big, huge, big deal. And now I'm going to jump to miracles, and I'm going to put these two together. When I first observed healings and miracles, I'm talking people who healed within one workshop. I thought, what is that about? How could some people heal so fast, other people heal not at all? But by this time, I also knew that self-esteem has become a major core in our lives. Self-empowerment, self-esteem. It's become a major part of who we are. And in previous generations, it was never, the word self went with selfish. But now we take the word self, and it is very important for us to discover the inner self and who we are and everything that goes with, because it's a doorway into our soul. It's a path into the power of our soul. Who's in charge of your creative power? Your inner self is the first stage of you taking charge of the power to co-create your reality. That's your battery. Your sense of self-esteem is essential for you to have this sense of, I am actually in charge of the creation of my reality. You have to esteem yourself to be, it is the essential ingredient. And in the development, if you don't have that sense of self-esteem, who is creating your reality for you? Other people. Other people. And if other people are creating your reality, do you understand you cannot heal? I am here to tell you something. You cannot heal because they have more influence over your immune system than you do. You're like eau de toilette, cologne, and perfume. Unless you are in charge of your sense of self-esteem, other people are the ones who are controlling your immune system. You are not. Why am I making such a big deal out of this? Because what is a miracle? A miracle is something that happens in your penthouse. It is something that happens out of ordinary time. It is something that people say cannot happen, but it does happen. So they say somebody who's got very crippled hands can't heal, and all of a sudden they open up. A few years ago, a man who was completely blind goes to my college in Terre Haute, Indiana, and he went and prayed by in the church. It was founded by the Sisters of Providence, the nuns that educated me. Back in 1840, it was founded by Mother Theodore Guerin and a group of French nuns who came over from outside Paris. And this nun, obviously, she passed away over a century ago, century and a half. But through the years, healings have been credited to her. And this was the last one. This man went there about 8 years ago now. He was blind. He had gone to his doctor in the morning to see if he could have one more eye surgery, and the doctor said, look, we could do it, it's difficult, and you might get 5% back, but you'll only see shadows. And he had these awful cataracts and growths on his eyes. On the way home, he said to his wife, can we just stop at the church? And he wasn't Catholic, but he'd heard about this nun. So he goes, and this is exactly his prayer. He said, I'm not Catholic or anything, but I could use some help. So if you could put in a word for me, I'd appreciate it. That was his prayer. He woke up in the morning, and nothing about his eyes had physically changed. The gray filter was still over, but he had 20/20 vision, which he still does. He ended up going to Rome, and it was declared a miracle. Now, that happened the day I started my book tour for Entering the Castle, which has all to do with my relationship with St. Teresa of Avila. And this was also the college that I went to school at. That particular day was filled with miracle stuff. And and that day a miracle happened in my book tour. That was the day the miracle happened also. So I thought, what is it? And it was just a few days later, like one of those downloads, and I realized that, miracles are not about how many candles you light or any of that nonsense, whether or not you're a Catholic or a Buddhist or a Martian, but it's about self-esteem. It's about whether or not you can endure, and I do mean endure, whether you can endure an experience that God gives you that isn't given to anybody else. that you can't explain. Whether you can endure the doubt of other people coming at you saying that it could never happen, but it did happen, and it happened to you. Whether you have the self-esteem and the power within you to maintain your center when you know that you've experienced something you cannot prove, that is more real in the world behind your eye than in front of it, when all the doubt of people coming at you with their windows saying, I can't see this, and it doesn't happen on my floor, but it did happen on your floor. And the truth is, most people can't do it. Most people, and this is where self-esteem comes in, and this is where it just duplicates with healing. Most people need to live their lives at the pace of their watch. Most people cannot bear to have God come in their lives and move their life at light speed instantly. They can't bear it. It's too fast. It's too fast. How many of you have deliberately slowed down an intuitive hit? You got a hit, you got it. You think, you walk in and you say, I wonder what's going on here. And instantly you know, that person doesn't feel well, or this is going on, or that's going on. But you don't want that information. You don't like what your intuition said, or you think, what's wrong here? And you instantly know, this is over, I've got to go. I don't like it here, or I'm unhappy. And you know it's instant, but you don't want that information. Your angel said, what do you want me to tell you? And your angel just tells you the truth, but you don't want that. So you actually don't want it at light speed. So you have to start putting some narrative in it that's not true. You have to start telling yourself something else. You have to say, no, that's really not, no, it's not, I'm okay. You have to start mixing deception, denial. And you have to work that in, and you think you have to get 2 or 3 years worth of denial in and slow down, right? And then what happens is inevitably, that moment will come when, in fact, you leave or something breaks up or the marriage ends or whatever, and then you will say, I knew it all the time. How many of you have been through just exactly what I'm talking to? All of you. But you didn't want it at the speed of light. When you ask how God works, that's how God works. At the speed of light. What God does not do is compensate for stupid. Heaven does not compensate for stupid. So you don't pray like it. Don't pray like, like this. This person. Human beings make me laugh, I tell you what. This person said, do you have any prayers that work? What are you going to do with that? And I just looked, And then another person said, I will never forget this so long as I look. She said, God can't hurt me. My money's in a trust fund. What human beings believe is beyond my comprehension. It's beyond my comprehension. It is unbelievable. It's unbelievable. This is what is true. Now, your bio-spiritual self is receiving guidance all the time. All the time. You are just wired in all the time. Every single part about you is receiving guidance all the time. What heaven will never do is tell you what's going to happen. So don't be stupid. Don't act like, well, if I only knew what to do, I'll do it. No, I'm sorry, that's not the way to go. Here's what's true about heaven. When you ask for guidance, You will never be told how things are going to work out. So don't wait for that. Don't wait for proof of anything. Ever. But when you know something is wrong, when you know when you say to heaven, when you wonder, how should you pray? Pray like you're crazy. That's what I always tell God. Tell everybody, pray like you're crazy. Let heaven show off. Let heaven show off. Just say, you know what? I just take over, and I'm going to sleep. Heaven gets the night shift, and you get the day shift. And that's how you have to think. But don't be filled with doubt. Don't be filled with doubt. Don't think that heaven works like you do. Think of all the wonderful things in your life that have happened, and if you'll look at it, how much of those wonderful things did you actually have anything to do with? And you'll discover very little. Whereas all your problems have your handiwork on them. Am I right? I'm totally right. Your fingerprints are all over your difficulties. And all you have to do is look at that very clearly, because you overreact and you're frightened and you're suspicious and you're insecure. And where has that ever gotten you? No place. Absolutely no place. And most of your problems, most of the things you're most afraid of have never come to pass. And yet you're obsessed with it. You're obsessed. You're obsessed by fears and things that actually don't happen. You're nuts. You're absolutely crazy. Now, yeah, really? Am I right or am I right? I'm totally right. You know, years ago, I had the experience of encountering the voice of Teresa of Avila. I was on a chair just like this, and I was lecturing just like this, and I thought I was going into a grand mal seizure in front of a group of students. And I heard her voice, and she said, "Follow me, daughter." I never saw her, but I heard her. That's what started all my work in Myss. That's what started the work I do today and will do for the rest of my life. I ended up writing Entering the Castle, and I ended up doing everything, writing book on prayer, I ended up going this route. That day, as I sat there on this chair in front of people, I knew my life was changing forever. I knew it. In that microsecond, all of these things ran through my head. Like, there was a part of me that felt, oh my God. And there was a part of me that thought, oh my God. Because the Catholic in me knew what this meant. The deep, mystical Catholic in me. And the other part thought, oh my God, it's just, oh, wow. And then the other part thought, oh, there's no getting out of this now. When I went home after that weekend, and here's something that happened. I was going to lecture on, I hardly knew the work of Teresa of Avila. And that morning I was going to do a 15-minute, 20-minute lecture on what little I knew about her, and then go into John of the Cross and Ignatius of Loyola, who I knew a lot about. And then in the afternoon I was going to teach Rumi. But what happened was her work downloaded into me as if I'd been a scholar of hers from Oxford, as if I'd known all her work. And I lectured the whole weekend on Teresa of Avila. It just poured out. And there were moments where I was actually watching myself thinking, holy mackerel. I could not get over it. I couldn't get over it. I just couldn't get over it. It was as if I'd known her, as if I couldn't get over it. I was never exhausted. I couldn't stop teaching her. It was, right? And my whole relationship with what I knew to be true about heaven and the presence of angels and the presence of God in our lives shifted. Not that I ever doubted it, but I never thought I would talk to you about it. I never thought I would be the one to say to you, prayer matters. Don't ever doubt it. Prayer is power. I never wanted to be the one to bring this message to anybody because I liked my own privacy in this. But what I want to say to you is that I'm telling you now, there isn't a breath you take that heaven doesn't know about, and you never get away with anything. If you think that you have one secret, you're crazy. I'm telling you, you are crazy. And every act of kindness matters, but every act of darkness is noted, duly noted. This is not a world where you can sit back. It's so easy for us to sit back and say, how can this happen? How can that happen? How can this happen? Look, heaven plays the long game. Heaven plays the long game. We don't. We think every life we have is so important and every day we have is such a big deal. It's not. It's not. You have to get over thinking you're so important. We're not. We're not. This is divine paradox. We're very important and we're not important, and both are true simultaneously. Both are true. There's always another human being that's coming down the pike to replace us. We are easily replaced and yet totally remembered. Both are true. The greatest gifts you can give yourself is do not hang on to your past. There's nothing back there. If you think that you are serving yourself by thinking, if I only can reconcile this, if I only knew why things happened as they did, you are mistaken. Imagine that some angel said to you, okay, this is why it happened, because it did. Now what do you want to know? Now what do you want to know? What will be accomplished by you knowing any of that? Do you get to say to someone, I hate you for hurting me, okay? Now you hate them for hurting me, and now what? And now what? And where do you go from there? I want to kill you, okay, and now what? And now what? Do not tell yourself you're trying to forgive when in fact you're working on being vengeful. Tell yourself what's true and get that stuff out of you. Don't waste your life being hateful. Do not wake up angry. Do not wake up angry. Don't base your life on what other people are doing. This world is filled with so much darkness now because we are at this vulnerable stage. We are between myths of God, and we've never been more vulnerable. Ever. This is the time when every one of us feels like we have a story to tell. We are all channeling something. You are discovering how powerful you are, how powerful your soul is. I truly urge you, get a prayer life. Learn to say to God, I don't even know how to pray, but I'm here. Every day. I don't even know how. Even if all you ever say is, keep me in a field of grace and everyone I love. Help me to do no harm. At least that. Help me to do no harm. Help me to have faith and at least start with yourself. Help me to have faith and trust in myself, and I'll work from there. What you need to know, and you really got to get this, is we are all connected on the internet. Internet. We are all one. And what we do to the least of any brethren, we are doing to ourselves. These laws that Buddha taught, that Jesus taught, that the mystics taught, what we are living now is that these laws are finally becoming the laws of our biology. The mystical laws that Jesus taught, the laws that Buddha taught, they're finally becoming the laws of our bio-spiritual ecology. We are one, all life breathes together. We are one living organism, and that's the new theology. This is the new living God among the way God is. And you can't get away from it. The divine is everywhere. It's in every one of your cell tissue and every person you see. It is everywhere. And if you need a miracle, what a miracle is needing God to operate faster than in the speed of light instead of hour by hour, hour by hour. You want God in the speed of light. And so what you say to God is, look, I need you. I need you. And you take your hands off the steering wheel. You don't get to say to God, I need healing, but listen, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this, and I don't want to do this. You don't pray like that. When you need help, you pray and you surrender. So, surrender has been badly. Bill Wilson introduced surrender in the Alcoholics Anonymous. I mean, I know a lot about that. My brother died of alcoholism. And the surrender is, the way it was, like I just give up, I surrender to you, just blah. But that's not how mystics surrender. That's not how I want to offer you a different way of surrendering. That's not how Francis of Assisi surrendered, or Teresa of Avila, or John of the Cross, or Padre Pio, or Buddha. They surrendered because they thought, oh my God, I'm so powerful, I can't trust myself. I entrust this to you. What do you want me to do with this power? I surrender it to you. Talk to me. That's surrender. Where you realize, I have become such a power, I am such a powerful instrument. Where you finally get that every choice you say, every word you think, every thought you have, every heartbeat in you is so powerful you can change the world. Because that is the truth. And it doesn't matter that you don't get how. You're not in the business of needing to know how. You're in the business of faith, of deciding, you know what, and I'll tell you how. Go through the back door. If you don't think I'm telling you the truth, then ask yourself, think about this. This is the reason why you're always so afraid to make a decision, because you know how powerful every decision is. Because you know damn well that is exactly how powerful every choice you make is, which is why you're always so afraid to make any choice at all. Because you know exactly how powerful a choice is. You know exactly how powerful, what it means to give your word locks you in for eternity. Eternity. Absolutely. So when you get up in the morning and you say to God, okay, good morning. What do you want me to do today? Figure it out. I'm going to take a shower. That's how you pray. I'll see you in a minute. That's how you pray. You pray as if heaven is your best companion, your dearest friend, your most intimate other, because that's exactly right. There are so many times, I'm not kidding you, when I'll be talking to someone and I can feel myself losing it. And I'll say to them, I'll be right back, but I don't go anywhere, except behind my eyes, and I'll think, you better download me with some grace. I mean, like, now. And then I'll say, I'm right back. I'm back. I'm back. I'm big back. Yeah, I'm back. I'm back. Yeah. Because, and I fully expect exactly the help I ask for, and I'm not imagining. And sometimes in my prayers I'll say, I think people think I imagine you. And then I'll start laughing. Because sometimes I'll say, I wish I did imagine you, life would be so much easier. It would be so much easier. I want to just pour out faith and grace to you. I'm going to tell you that there isn't anything that cannot change in the blink of an eye the power of God. You have no idea. Just don't take your hands off. Never tell yourself, I just don't see how this could be. It's not your business to see anything. Remember how inadequate you are. Just remember that. Remind yourself you're inadequate or you wouldn't be in the problem you are. Am I right? If you weren't so inadequate and inept, you wouldn't have those problems. And that's why heaven comes in. And that's where you just say, look, I have to go to bed. Figure it out. I'm going to bed. And fully expect by morning something will have been resolved. I have never been disappointed. Never. And remember something, truly, I have to say, heaven's not in the business of happiness. Heaven's in the business of truth. Heaven's in the business of strength, which doesn't mean being happy is not part of it, but heaven is in the business of you becoming whole, of you becoming strong, of you becoming trusting, so that you are not afraid to be fully alive in the life that you have. Can you possibly want more than that? And when you close your eyes and say, God, grant me the grace, grant me counsel here, I need to hear, what do you want me to do? Grant me counsel, and download it. And when you get that feeling, and you trust and have faith enough in yourself to act on it, this is the nature of God. This is the nature of God with you every second of your life. That's exactly what it is. Now, I have this book coming out next year. It's called The Power of Holy Language. Prayer, Grace, and Guidance. And I brought a prayer that I thought from the book that I would end our evening with tonight. Is that okay? Have I kept you a little too long? Okay, I don't care. I don't ever get to see you, so what? Okay, I shared prayers with, my book has 100 prayers that I wrote, and I shared prayers, and this woman came up to me and she said, I don't know why you said the word Lord. And I said, well, look at this face. I'm an old Catholic. And I said, put in anything you want. And that's about as sweet as I got with her. Shut up. I could have said that, which occurred to me, but I didn't. So, Lord, today my prayer is I breathe with all living creatures. I'll dwell in the mystical truth that I share the breath of creation with all sentient beings. I'm beginning to comprehend the rules of co-creation. Little by little, I observe that each choice I make sets divine light into motion or into darkness. I'm not alone in this universe, even though sometimes I feel that I am. My thoughts and emotions belong to everyone, and somehow, in some way, the energy of all beings pass through me like wind through a cheesecloth. I realize we all share this earth and participate in the creation of every event, and nothing could be more preposterous than to believe that any of us is separate or safe or immune from acts of creation or destruction. What is in one is in the whole. And I wonder, Lord, why we are often so repelled by that sacred truth. Why do we not want to be one with all beings? If I could see clearly, Lord, I would see that my energy is everywhere. I've left millions of tiny particles of my energy like cosmic crumbs in every country, city, town, and home I visited, not to mention every street I've ever walked down. The same is true for everyone else. We are always blending together a great cosmic weave of living power. No wonder the great mystics finally surrendered to you. They wanted you to take charge of this immense power of creation that is set into motion with every breath we take. Today, Lord, I breathe with all creation, and I dwell in the truth that I am one with all life, and all life is one with me, and for that I am so grateful. Amen. So, thank you, everyone. Wouldn't it be fun to stay here till midnight? Do you have any questions? Can I ask any questions before we go? You got anything? Yeah, go.
There's this thing where you talk about how incredibly powerful we are.
Yeah.
And then how inept we are, unpowerful we are.
We are powerful and inept. Both are true. Isn't that amazing? This is where we are incredibly powerful in that by design, energetically, energy to matter. We are always creating. We are always creating. And where we are incredibly inept is that we don't get it. And we don't trust it. And we don't believe it, and we don't live it. And I could say the same thing is true with we are incredibly powerful in that we are born intuitive. We're born. It's not a gift. We're born. Your intuition is up and running before you're even 2 months old. And we are wired. We are wired. And yet we're inept because we don't listen to it, do we? How many times? Do you know most of your suffering is because you don't listen to your intuition? Because you've betrayed yourself? Because you betrayed yourself or you betrayed someone else. And then in order to live with yourself for betraying your own intuition, you got to take it out on someone else. You have to punish them. You have to spew it out on someone else. That's how we are. So I call that inept. Am I making it clear? Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah. Do you have a question? Anyone else? Yeah, go.
You talk about prayer for yourself.
Yeah.
What about prayers for others?
Prayers for others. Always pray for others, but don't tell God what to do. Which is, don't say, oh, God, like, protect them and then change their mind and make them this and make them that, make them stop drinking, make them that. Stop, butt out. Nobody's life was born to serve you or stay with you. That is a real big pill to swallow. Nobody was born to stay with you. Nobody. Everybody was born to leave you. Isn't that frightening? But it's the truth. Oh. It is the absolute truth. Who was born to stay with any of us? So the only thing you can do is God, help me to serve them and whatever it is. You cannot take another person's life journey from them because it makes you feel better. So one prayer is, help me get my act together. I am so screwing it up down here. Does that help you? Does that help you? Here's another prayer. Help me stop lying. I have a bad time with the truth. Any of you? If you don't think that heaven pays attention, you better think again. Because heaven pays attention. You don't get away with a thing. You do not get away with a thing. And there's no such thing as a small lie. And let me tell you something. Your body breaks down when you don't tell the truth. It is like poison. People think, oh, smoking's so bad and blah, 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 blah. You want to see bad? Lie. Lying is poison in your immune system. You could eat cat food and smoke, and it's better than lying. Yeah. What about praying for dead? Well, you know, it's a funny kind of thing. Like, I think this opens such a crazy conversation. Well, this is a big conversation, not a little one. This is, you know, every tradition worth its salt has a ritual, a sacrament. I prefer the word sacrament, for helping someone to pass over, to make the journey home. My soul sister is here, and she's part of the Threshold Singers who help to sing people across the river back home, which I think is a holy sacrament. And in all cases, it is extremely important for everyone, every soul. The essence of extramunction, the last rites, is to finish your unfinished business before you go. That you collect all the parts of your soul to take with you, so you leave nothing behind. You leave nothing behind. This brings up, what is the crime of murder? What makes murder a crime? What makes suicide a crime? What makes these crimes? Because the soul was prematurely, the journey of the soul was prematurely aborted. And the soul often leaves and doesn't exactly know what happened to me. What happened? There's a reason why in the sacrament of preparing for you to go over is so important. Is there something like a purgatory? Yeah. Is hell eternal? No. Do prayers? Yes. And what happens is that, what is a prayer? A prayer is a unit of light, of holy light. And think about that prayer of holy light going into your energy field. And what it is like it makes your energy field just a little bit lighter, a little bit lighter, a little bit lighter, a little bit lighter. And if you die in a state of sorrow, if you die in a state of darkness, then imagine that you die and you are greeted. Still, you have a life review. And in a life review, you're shown everything that could have been had you been more loving. You're shown everything that you could have chosen, that you knew at the time. You knew this, but you chose this. What is a sin, for example? What is a sin? In my book, The Power of Holy Language, one of the things I talk about is I reintroduce I talk about the problems that we are suffering from in ourselves because we've removed language we need. We don't use the word sin anymore. We don't use the word blasphemy. We don't use the word sacrilege. We don't use the word sin. You know what a sin is? A sin is when someone knowingly knows this is going to hurt you. If I do this, it will hurt you. And I know it will hurt you. And even though I know consciously it's going to damage your life, but still, that doesn't stop me. That's not a boo-boo. I don't get to say to you, I never meant to hurt you, because that's a lie on top of it. In fact, I knew it would hurt you. And even in my knowing how dark it was, what makes it a sin is that I used my will, my power of choice, against a human being to harm their life. And that is something heaven pays attention to. You better believe it. You better believe it. And that is why forgiveness is so difficult when it is attached to a sin. You can forgive someone for saying, oh, I'm so sorry I was late, you know, blah, 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 blah. But when you consciously, when someone says, oh, I never meant to hurt you, and they think, why don't you forgive me? I said, I'm sorry and I never meant to hurt you. When it's attached to, you know what? You knew. You did this consciously. If they said to you, you know what? You're absolutely right. It was conscious. I knew exactly what I was doing, and I have sinned against you. If they used the right language, and they said, I'm asking your forgiveness. I have sinned. My soul has wounded your soul, and I am so sorry. Now we're talking. But because we don't use this anymore and we don't acknowledge sin, we're in therapy for 25 years. Because you know when someone says, I'm sorry, and I don't know, what's the matter with you? Why aren't you forgetting? Why aren't you letting it go? You can't let go when you're not at the level of the soul. Because it's not about just let it go because no. So why do we have prayers like this? Because when you die, I think, and you have a lot of that kind of stuff in you, that needs to come out. And that last rites, when someone says, do you have a confession? You need to say, I have sinned against people. I have. And I want this out before I journey home. I have to let you journey home. I'm kidding. I'm sorry. I wish I could stay longer, but I'm getting the evil eye. Okay. I have to. I'm so sorry. Good night, everybody. Good night. Thank you. Thank you. It's wonderful being with you. Thank you.